All right, let's dive right into a horticultural mystery, one that can haunt even the most careful orchid growers. We're going to unmask a tiny, microscopic menace that could be hiding out in your collection as we speak, the root knot nematode.
So, have you ever had this happen? You go to repot an orchid, you're expecting these beautiful, healthy roots, and instead you find this strange, lumpy growths that just look wrong, almost alien. It's a really disheartening sight, and it's a question that tons of growers have asked themselves in total frustration.
Well, guess what? Those bumps aren't some weird plant mutation, and it's not a sign you've been overwatering. No, they're the calling card of a hidden enemy, an invader so tiny you can't even see it. It's waging a secret war right there just beneath the surface of your potting mix.
Okay, so let's properly meet our culprit. We are talking about the root knot nematode. This isn't just any old pest, it's a parasitic worm that's actually one of the most destructive plant pathogens on the entire planet.
So what exactly is it? Well, root knot nematodes, or RKNs for short, belong to the genus Meloidogyne. Now, these are not the friendly, beneficial nematodes you might have heard about. These are parasites through and through, which means they literally can't survive without a living plant host. Their entire mission in life is to infect plant roots and trick them into forming these tumor-like galls, or knots, which just completely cripples the plant's ability to get water and food.
And, this isn't some new problem that just popped up. Scientists have been on the trail of this enemy for well over 150 years. Way back in 1855, a Reverend M.J. Barkley noticed these vibrio-like worms inside cucumber roots. But it wasn't until 1932 that the great nematologist Nathan Cobb actually established the genus Meloidogyne, and he did it by figuring out that you could use the female's unique fingerprints to tell all the different species apart.
Now, if you really want to understand the damage these things cause, we have to look at their life cycle. And honestly, it's less of a cycle and more like a carefully planned military invasion of your orchid's root system.
Think of it like a 6-step heist. It all starts when the infective juvenile hatches and starts hunting for a root. Then it uses this tiny needle-like mouthpart, it's called a stylet, to puncture its way inside the root tip. From there, the real hijacking begins. It moves into the plant's vascular tissue, its plumbing, and injects all these special proteins. And this is the really wild part. Step 4. These proteins actually reprogram the plant's own cells, forcing them to swell up and merge into these giant cells. They become permanent feeding stations for the nematode. After that, it matures into the swollen, pear-shaped female, basically an egg factory, that lays hundreds of new eggs to start the whole heist over again.
And the sheer scale of this is it's staggering. A single female can produce thousands of eggs in her short life. That's exactly why an infestation can seem to explode out of nowhere, and it just quickly overwhelms a plant's defenses.
Okay, so you've got this super stealthy invader. How can you possibly be sure that it's nematodes and not something else, right? Well, it's time for us to play detective and figure out how to properly diagnose an infestation in your own collection.
The evidence shows up in two different places. So below the surface, the smoking gun is right there, those firm, solid knots on the roots. But above ground, the symptoms are a lot more subtle, and honestly, they're really easy to misdiagnose. We're talking about things like stunted growth, yellowing leaves, and a plant that looks totally thirsty even when you know you just watered it. And that's because those damaged roots just can't do their job anymore.
And this chart really breaks it down. The absolute most important thing to check is the texture. Nematode galls are firm, they're solid. Root rot, on the other hand, is soft and mushy. And with rot, that outer layer of the root, the velamen, it'll just slough right off in your fingers. That does not happen with nematode galls. And believe me, getting this diagnosis right is absolutely critical.
Okay, so we've identified the enemy, we know its playbook. Now let's get to the most important part, your defense plan. How do you protect your precious orchids from this microscopic army?
And look, if you remember one thing from this whole explainer, make it this: prevention is everything. Once these nematodes get a foothold in your collection, they are incredibly, incredibly difficult to get rid of. An ounce of prevention is worth way more than a pound of cure here.
So what does that proactive prevention actually look like? Well, first off, quarantine. Every single new plant that comes into your house needs to be kept separate for at least 2 or 3 months. Second, never ever reuse old potting mix. Just don't do it. Always start with fresh, sterile media. Third, you got to be meticulous about hygiene. Sterilize your pots, your tools, your pruning shears, everything between every single plant. A quick soak in a 10% bleach solution works perfectly. And finally, do yourself a favor and buy your plants from reputable sellers who are known for being clean.
But what if it's already too late for prevention? Your first, and frankly your best, response is something called cultural control. This means you've got to unpot the plant, wash off all the roots, and then surgically remove every single piece of root that has a gall on it. I know, it feels really drastic, but you have to do it. Then you repot it in a clean pot with fresh mix. Chemical controls, these things called nematicides, they should be your absolute last resort. They're often pretty toxic, they're hard for hobbyists to even get their hands on, and they can easily damage or even kill a sensitive orchid.
Now there is one other kind of advanced technique, the hot water method. So after you've pruned off all the galls, you can dip the roots that are left in water that's heated to exactly 120 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes. This can kill off any remaining nematodes and their eggs. But I have to warn you, this is a high-risk move. A few degrees too hot, a couple minutes too long, and you will literally cook your plant's roots. This is definitely not for the faint of heart.
The fight against these invaders is tough, for sure, but there is some hope on the horizon. So let's take a quick peek at the future and some of the cool innovations that might help us protect our plants down the road.
Yeah, scientists are working on this from a bunch of different angles. I mean, the ultimate goal, the holy grail, is to breed orchids that have natural genetic resistance. But we're also seeing some amazing new biocontrols, like special fungi that literally trap and eat nematodes in the soil. How cool is that? Researchers are also working on safer, plant-based nematicides from things like neem and marigolds. And pretty soon, we might even have rapid DNA test kits that let us detect an infestation before we can even see the galls.
But even with all of this amazing future technology, the single most powerful tool is always going to be you, the observant, vigilant grower. Just understanding this threat, knowing what to look for, that's your best defense. So the question I'll leave you with is this: how well do you really know your roots?